outside of 12-step that basically are centered on the cultural worldview of the people generating them. So part of the piece is, again, looking at their emotional wounding and being able to deal with it. I'm a heterosexual middle-class black man. My drugs of choice were pot and the natural psychedelics. I never have injected drugs or done white dope. But I've successfully treated people over a 40-year career. So I don't have to have the exact same experience they do. I just have to understand what they're going through and be able to walk them through it. Same thing with you. I'm not gay, but I have gay clients, HIV positive clients, people in the sex industry, various aspects of the sex industry. I've never participated in the sex industry. I don't know what that's like, but I do know that women are exotic dancers and paying for school, right? And having to deal with that whole thing, right? And they see it as an addictive behavior that they need to recover from, but they also are not qualifying for financial aid, so boom, they still have to survive. Here we go. So meditation, self-care, self-defense. So the bottom line is to be able to explain to the client so they can see what the problem is and form solution in their own language and in their own practice. Now, what I mean by language, of course, is not just whether it's English or Spanish, though that's true, but the level of language that they're talking about. Because just like higher education has a middle-class bias, because it has a middle-class bias, treatment and the language of science also has a middle-class bias. So you're expected to talk about your feelings at a level that is college level in treatment. And how many people are at college level in treatment? Not many. There are some. But this whole language of psychology is coming from a certain class worldview. That's why often people who have a great deal of book learning can't relate to people with street wisdom. Even to put it that way, street wisdom. It is wisdom, but it's not written down in books. So you often have a worldview gap, right? So I used to use these psychology theories because I have degrees in psychology, and since they are useful to some degree, and you'll get this included in the slides. But again, psychology was normed as if there are not social inequities. Like people aren't poor, like people don't have barriers. That would be a lie. Put it bluntly. So, research was performed and evidence-based treatments normed for a white middle-class population, because that's who was available for higher ed to study easily. So, for example, motivational interviewing, which I'll refer to as MI. So when we talk about disaggregating the data, so disaggregating the data is a basic research, but it's also a community organizing technique. How does the intervention work with different populations? You should ask the question, and you should be able to ask the researcher that question if they've thought about it. It's a real simple question. So you remember, have I told you about my experience with the Department of Youth Services and DMC? Okay, disaggregating the data. Here's how it works. My theory going into this study. So this is an example of being a treatment person and doing research on the fly in the community. I was working as a drug counselor at Churchill High School. One black kid and a car full of white kids, all smoking weed together, they get a pot ticket. White kids got treatment, black kid got jail. No treatment. No treatment from the Department of Youth Services. So we knew from people who are black people working inside the Department of Youth Services that when black kids don't get treatment for the same kids white kids get, they go further and further into the criminal justice system. So I knew this kid. So I was asked to visit the Department of Youth Services by the local NAACP, and I said, disaggregate the data. And I was talking with a data person. I said, give me drug offenses aggregated by race. Give me the white kids, give me the black kids, natives, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Break it down. So what's happening? So what happens with the white kid? Well, we treat all kids the same. They told me that. Okay, this is 1991. First offense, letter. Second offense, treatment. Okay. That's what you do for everybody. Yes. What does the data say after we disaggregate it? Black girl, African American female, 9 offenses. No TX. Hispanic, male, 7 offenses. No TX. Native American kid, 5 offenses. And with here, this person was also, you have the 9 Oregon tribes, so actually tribal benefits will pay for treatment. No treatment. Okay, you and Asians, they weren't in the mix. Okay, you just told me that one thing and your data is saying another. And we found this out by disaggregating the data. So, let's get minority kids into treatment. Let's try that for a second. All right? So, back to slide. Thanks. Motivational interviewing, once you look at the disaggregated data, works for black women better than men. Which is not to say that it doesn't work with men, but you have to be asked curious but knowing and penetrating questions with the men. Because motivational interviewing is simply what we used to call curiosity. What's your story? Why do you think that? So you have to know what questions to ask. So with black men, that might be, in Oregon, what's your experience with racism? Even if you're a white person. Just like I have to ask with white women who are cutters, who have eating disorders, that's almost always driven by sexual abuse. Ask the sexual abuse question. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. Yeah, you're going to get an outflowing of pain because you might be the first person that asked that. Be ready for that and be calm. Right? So, but that's standard now. I ain't going to say I'm a pioneer, but the people that train me to look for that kind of stuff. Ask a curious but knowing and penetrating question. So what if freedom from addiction was a civil rights issue? Now, the reason I'm using Bob Moses, he's founder of the Al-Gebra Project, and what the Al-Gebra Project is if algebra is a civil rights issue. If you don't get algebra in middle school, you don't go to college. Guess who decides who gets algebra and not in middle school, and who does and who doesn't? Minority kids tend not to. He's still alive, a Harvard-trained mathematician who was a SNCC organizer, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee organizer in the 60s. So he's already oriented to civil rights, and a Harvard-trained mathematician who developed a project for teaching kids about algebra. Now, when I talk about algebra literally means, as you've heard me say, the mending, right? So, What if treatment became a luxury that only the rich could afford and the poor got put in prison? And you might say, oh, well, that's happening already. Right. Instead of giving you treatment, they take your kids away as an incentive to get you to complete treatment. Yeah, they do. Well, do you think they do that in the South Hills? Of Eugene? Maybe not. Okay, so we notice that there's class differences. Those are social inequities that need to be healed. So, what are the basic principles you would need to teach people to remain or become free or healthy? What are those basic principles inside and outside of treatment? So we have to think about that. Freedom for addiction is a civil rights issue. So the algebra of addiction. So let's take alcohol. All problems with alcohol come from overdoses. So in other words, exceeding both a safe and effective adult dose, 0.02, which basically you're still able to function, still able to have judgment, still able to have memory, lightly buzz, but most people don't want to do lightly buzz, so they overdrink. And also the legally intoxicated dose of 0.08. Most people drink way past that. All right? So this would be like the equivalent, and you can put it to them in these terms of, look, if you're eating a bottle of aspirin, we see that as a suicide attempt. How come we don't see that if you're drinking a fifth of vodka or a case of beer? How come that's not seen as a suicide attempt? Because Anheuser-Busch has better marketing than Bayer? No. Society has basically made some of these things normalized. That's a civil rights issue. So, regularly overdosing on alcohol will put you in danger of being unable to remember who you are or what you're doing, and put you at the mercy of whoever's around you. Like I said earlier, do you trust strangers with your life? Do you live in a community where trustworthy strangers are in abundance? So why are you putting yourself in danger with people that you wouldn't trust? Now, you can only apply this logic chain once they're detoxed. There's no point in asking these questions while they're loaded. Because they ain't going to remember, right? Duh. But part of the piece is they've probably never been asked this question before. Never thought of it that way. So what you're building is, hey, okay, I'm from LA, I'm black in Oregon, I'm paranoid. But it isn't that they're not after me. I don't go walking after dark in certain neighborhoods in Eugene because black people have been attacked. That's not paranoia, that's fact from the police. I do tend to speed, but I don't tend to speed in beater cars. So I haven't been racially profiled in 20, 30 years, so okay. I have gotten speeding tickets. So I don't do risky behavior, except speeding, naturally. The answer isn't simply giving people factual head knowledge, understanding. It's also illuminating their emotional world, inner standing, and giving the perspective that guides their actions as an integral, conscious part of a greater whole, overstanding. So, understanding, inner standing, and overstanding. It's a hip-hop reference. All right, if you're not into hip-hop, whatever. But okay, just understanding, inner standing, overstanding. Okay, algebra means the mending. So broken stick joined by the equal sign. What you do to one side, you do to the other. What you do above, you do below. In order of operations in algebra, if you recall, you do the hardest thing first. Go to the center of the deepest pain you're willing to recognize, if we're talking about this in counseling terms. Go directly there. Especially if the population is high risk. In fact, you won't get them. You will not retain them in treatment unless you go there first. Guarantee you. Go to the center of the deepest pain. Now, here's how treatment fails. They're not willing to go there. And if a 12-step framework won't take you to the deepest pain, you need to apply what will go to the deepest pain. So it's not always the deepest pain, but certainly the deepest pain the client is willing to recognize, and the client will follow your lead. If you don't say nothing, they won't bring it up. So that's why you got to go there. You're the professional. You got to go there.
So do you think it's true that if the client's not willing to go there or whatever, that plays a part in the success or non-success of the treatment?
Yes. Basically, you have to be willing to recognize what the reality is and acknowledge what the reality is. And you have to bring it up, because it won't be safe for them to bring it up. They won't feel like it is unless you bring it up first. You're giving them permission to talk about their reality. For example, I mentioned part of the sex industry, all right? So exotic dancers. If an exotic dancer, just like as part of any bar, you know, you can score drugs in bars.
All the time.
I didn't know that. I'm shocked that such a thing could exist and the police don't go in the bar and bust. So what if you're an exotic dancer in the bar and you may or may not be strung out? Might you deal with the police or pimps or people who are shady? Might you have been exposed to being sexually assaulted? Might you have to have given sexual favors to get out of being busted? Might you see where I'm going with this? What if you regularly had to deal with, I had actually asked another professional this question, ever had to deal with dirty cops? Reason was, client brought me some stuff where I'm going, yeah, I'm from LA, dirty cops are, yeah, we know about them. This is a smaller town. I would expect less, but wherever people can get away with stuff, they will. And would an exotic dancer be believed? Could she press charges? No. How do you call the cops on the cops? Might she have some feelings? Yes. That are driving her particular addiction, eating disorder, whatever. Yes. So you got to bring it up, because it might be dangerous for her to bring it up to somebody because she don't know whether she can trust you. Look, I'm not going to go to internal affairs. I'm dealing with you. You're the one sitting in front of me.
Okay, I have a question on that where you just made that statement.
Uh-huh.
Where you said that you're a court reporter?
Mandatory reporter for child abuse. Okay? That's what the law says. Does the law give me a duty to report a dirty cop? I could, but that could be dangerous.
It doesn't require you to.
It does not require me to, no. But that's data.
Yeah.
That's data, because I know.
It's like, how do we fix a broken system if nobody's willing to step up?
Well, ask a dirty cop on television, in the movies. What did Denzel Washington say in Training Day? It's not what you know, it's what you can prove in a court of law. Okay, you want to bring down a dirty cop? Better have evidence that works federally. Okay? Because other cops might not testify against them, as we saw with the sex scandal with the 2 cops in Eugene.
Yeah.
Right? Lots of cops knew about that. Well, okay. Well, I'm just saying, we're not going to try and fix the system. We're trying to help the person get healing in front of us. But we have to know that the system is broken.
You want to keep them safe, too.
You want to keep them safe.
If you were to mention a cop
Right.
Or resist her in a situation.
Right.
So he probably wouldn't have mentioned it.
Exactly. Okay? I'm just being real because I've had to deal with this a lot. I used to work gangs in LA. I know certain situations, you're basically just dealing with the person in front of you. If the cop gets healing, great. But it's not your call unless they're in front of you. Because even if cops bring this, they get killed. Right? Yes, it is a broken system. So we're basically having them adjust to that. All right? So work it through to greater awareness. The next skill building exercise, for example, you've heard of them as problems. So basically, they're not problems. Just like they're not symptoms to the client. They may have a diagnosis, which is a collection of symptoms, but there's not symptoms to them. It's their problems. You can also reframe the problem idea by saying, it's not a problem, it's a skill-building exercise. How well did you do? This came from a math teacher about algebra. She said, don't think of them as problems. They're skill-building exercises. Yeah, okay. I still got an F on the test, but okay. I still need to work on my skill, huh? All right, so addiction's order of operations. Intake, assessment, treatment planning. That basically comes across as a dialogue with the client, with you. Detox, if they haven't detoxed. Sober living. Goal of a course is at least a year to 3 if it's meth. Counseling and therapy, either individually or in group. Motivational interviewing, which isn't just happening at intake. Basically, you continue to ask them questions that will motivate them to go further by saying, look, this pain that you're going through, these symptoms that you're going through in detox. So for example, with you have a really long-term withdrawal with script opiates, longer than street heroin. So you could have 28 days out, insomnia. Can only sleep for an hour a day. That would actually kind of drive you crazy. But it's a normal symptom. Keep going. Don't use. So life instruction, habilitation. We can't do rehabilitation if they never got habilitated in the first place. So that's giving them skills. Relapse prevention, telling them, having them identify what their triggers are and basically discharge. So if all this happens within a 28-day framework, you have to give them all those skills in the time that insurance will pay for. And if your program has an aftercare program, which is many of them do, then you basically follow the rest of these steps. So looking at living in recovery, relapse repair, and what I refer to as treatment repair is basically saying, okay, we need to revamp the system to deal with a certain more intense reality than treatment was designed to deal with, or a 12-step based treatment was designed to deal with.
I have a question. So, how when we were talking about, like, if with a child with some kind of addiction or something like that, and how you have 3 different aspects, and if one changes, like if your environment changes,
right,
if your school changes, or if your family lifestyle changes, you can ultimately recover,
right,
or get better.
We were talking about the resiliency matrix,
so
yeah.
If you're dealing with an adult,
Mm-hmm.
does school turn into the workplace, and then you have environment, and then relationships?
Yes, right. You shift domains then. Those 3 places. So with a resilient child, you put the child in the center. Then the first teacher for the child is family. And then school, if they're in school, because this was school-based research. So again, it's the worldview of the researchers. So, oh yeah, okay, we're school-based researchers. So, well, school is important in family, and then the community, right? Because schools exist within communities, and so do families, right? So all 3 of those can give a child the factors for resiliency, and theoretically they should all operate in concert, but in reality they don't because it's a broken system, right? So only one of them needs to deliver that to the child, and I've seen people make it with where only one of them, where the one of them happened to be me in the community. Having the child reframe their life in terms of, okay, this is what you need to do. Yes, you're a gang member. Yes, you were dealing drugs, blah, de, blah, de, blah, but how do you be of service to your community? Because that's really what they wanted to do, and they were told they couldn't. So that was the toxic meme piece. Oh, you're never going to graduate high school. You might as well go on welfare. Well, forget welfare. I want to live large, so I'll be a West Side Crip. Or whatever the equivalent is, right? So as an adult, if that gangbanging kid grows up, now you can't get a job because you got a record. So what do? So some of them are going to school here. Surprise, surprise, right? The PO wants them to either go to school or get a job. Ain't no jobs, let's go to school. Well, I haven't been in school since 4th grade, and I'm in math 10. How do I do that? Real person, right? Well, maybe I should do a housebird because I don't, wow, if I'm in prison, I don't even have to worry about feeding myself, don't need a job. It's actually better in prison than outside because I don't have to work and I get 3 squares and I can adjust if I have my gang, right? So, yeah, you could, but wouldn't you rather have your freedom? Well, freedom's scary, right? So in terms of building resiliency, it's different. You have to not just say, oh, just follow the straight and narrow path, because they got that street piece and not the school piece, and they're often at odds, so you have to reconcile them. That's part of where the conversation about dirty cops came with, an ex-gangbanger who's working to work the field. Already certified, already, multi-generational, not only gang family, but also multiple generations and people that are in the field too. Good side or bad side? What do I do? He's walking the middle path. And that's one of the things we talk about. Yeah, we can't train street wisdom. But if you're too much of the street and you don't know how to work the classroom, you don't have to deal with the games that other people are playing, including dirty cops. How do you work it? So it's tricky, right?
I just don't know how an adult, when you talk about resiliency, how it's really, because environment is a lot of what pulls to relapse or something. And
right.
If you can't change their workplace, or if you can't change their relationships, or if you can't change their community, and I just feel like it's really hard for them to get out, ultimately.
Well, okay, you're asking the question, so here it goes. Ready? All right, so child grows up, becomes an adult. And let's talk about this exact same framework. So, family, which is no longer the family of origin, it's an adopted family. And it's actually an adopted criminal family. Right? Sometimes they're the same, but a lot of times they're not, right? Then there's school, because if we're talking about here, right? And then the community, which could be programs, probation, police, etc. Right? Because they're on paper. So, part of school is not just what happens in the classroom. All right? So you reframe for self-education. You tell them, not everything that you know is in a book, and not everything you need to know is from a book, but what you've been oriented to in street wisdom is depend on stuff that ain't in books, that are still survival related, right? So you survived, that's a good skill, but survival means that you are reacting to an immediate crisis situation, another crisis situation, another crisis. It's like being strung out, because all you can think of is the next dose. So I asked this particular person, play chess? Love chess. Love chess. Pinochle too. Okay, chess. Yeah, in chess you have to think 5 moves ahead. He said that. That's what I was going to say. Right. Okay? Now, in game chess, right, you have rules. And I said, I play a form of chess called justice chess, in which you adopt the particular ground you're playing on. So like if it's LCC, the king is the president. The vice president is the queen. Managers are bishops. Faculty are knights. Public safety is rooks. Students and classified folks are pawns. Okay, so there's a power relationship, there's a hierarchy, and everybody has their moves that they can make and the moves that they can't make. So if you're a student in this system, you want to have a goal, and there are people or things that might be in your way. But you are the only piece that once you get to that goal transforms into anything you want. Mary Spildy was once a community college student. She was once a pawn. She advanced to president through vice president and through faculty, et cetera, et cetera. So if you have decided as an ex-con to get through this system, it's because you want to go somewhere else and you have to think strategically. Like, who's going to help me here? Who's going to work against me here? Same for here. Same for here.
That's such an interesting concept. I mean, that just blew my mind away because I'm a chess player. No, I'm serious.
Yeah, right.
It's like, who's going to protect my queen? Who's going to protect my king?
Right.
How am I going to stay out of checkmate?
In justice chess, you have to think about who is going to betray you. Because sometimes your closest friends will betray you. Not necessarily wittingly, but sometimes unwittingly. Predict their moves and plan ahead. 5 moves.
Wait, okay, sorry. So if I was a pawn, is the whole side of my board, am I also the queen? Like, is my
You're
other side of the board
in
my life?
order to become the queen, you have to know what the queen knows. And that might not be in a book.
But am I all the chess pieces on my side?
Potentially,
You have to get to the other side.
yeah, you have to get to the other side, and sometimes the other pieces can help you, but sometimes they can betray you. Sometimes you may be given up by your side in order
Say
for...
you can move forward and one piece can move diagonal, or one piece can move any direction.
See, the
You have
reason...
to know which way they're going to go and make
Right.
sure that where you're standing isn't going to be in their way.
Yes. And once you know the rules, you can also predict how they're going to cheat or betray you. That's what they don't teach you that in chess.
No, but it makes sense because, yeah, it just makes sense
Yeah.
to me.
Okay? So chess is giving you the skill of thinking 5 moves ahead when you're not in crisis. So that you can prepare for the move when the actual crisis happens and you can make the right decision, not in crisis. Oh, I was warned that this is going to happen. This is the move I should make. So whether the thing that can betray you is like using, when your old using buddies comes, no, I got a goal. And this is consistent with the resiliency material.
So is that...
You have to have a bright and promising future is what it's called. And this is why you do adaptive distancing. Okay? Adaptive distancing, I'm not going to end up like these folks. I've got a goal, and I'm following it, and I'm staying right on it, and there is a tendency to distract me from the goal. This is the way I'm going to move. All right? So basically so chess is also algebraic, too. Same people invented it. All right, so I didn't add the justice chess trope. That's actually from ethnic studies, but hey, whatever. So chess was a trope. It's a metaphor, right? Thanks. It's a metaphor, right? So the culinary trope. 12-step based treatment is like salt and pepper, ketchup, white bread and mayonnaise, maybe sauerkraut, but probably not. Okay? So while some people's lives have been lived with chipotle salsa, habanero peppers, they're too spicy for 12-step. So it don't work because it's not spicy enough for them. Doesn't mean that you can't add more salsa or habanero pepper to 12-step treatment, but that's more a factor of the individual person that can bring that experience. Another trope, swimming pool. 12-step based treatment is like teaching you how to float in the shallow end, maybe put your face underwater, or in advanced stages of 12-step treatment, swim laps. You're still swimming laps on the surface. Maybe you go at the deep end, but you're still swimming back and forth in flat water. What if your culture of big wave surfers, swimming laps in a pool don't do it for you? You do need the basic skills, but what if your life is like a big wave surfer? Your reality is dealing with currents, coral, rocks, hungry sea life, and huge waves. That's what you need to learn to negotiate. Some of that skill can be found within treatment in a swimming pool, but for the real life, you need other skill sets. Okay, now, if you want to just stick to a swimming pool, that's cool. Many people do. But some people within treatment can't. So meet their reality. This whole discussion that we had of adapting child resiliency to criminality, it's in the literature, because these kids do grow up. But you have to shift. I guess I could find that stuff and dig it up. All right, so you can stick to swimming pools, it's okay. All right, so we use evidence-based techniques, community-defined evidence, and whatever works to give you what you may or may not realize you need. So treatment needs to be more comprehensive than the 12-step model currently in use. So, for example, treatment design discussion at Lane. So I just suggested LCC to develop a treatment center unlike others in the area. Yeah. It would be a school, place of employment, a bank, financial literacy, entrepreneurial instructional business, which would employ student clients. Also, habilitate and train clients in terms of parenting, prevention, transition from one state like illegal to legal, free to justice, justice to free, because we actually have people transitioning from both, right? People get busted, they go to prison. How do you maintain your resiliency inside a prison without becoming more criminal? How do you adjust to free life? Military to civilian, refugee to citizen, etc. Or immigrant to citizen, same thing. Right? So a treatment center basically does all of that. Now, the model exists, actually, in real life, but not here. So just so you know, it's been done already. Hasn't been done in Oregon. So having a treatment center in a community college has been done in California. Nation of Islam delivered treatment combined with employment, prison outreach with a success rate with African Americans that exceeds 12-step programs. In fact, the Nation of Islam for black clients is more successful with black clients than 12-step programs, and that's from a black Republican conservative 12-stepper. So, the Kundalini Yogis, the Sikhs, had a yogic meditation service-based residential treatment program in Tucson. Basically, 6 months from junkie to yoga teacher. So, we'll continue. And I'll give you the rest of the slides.